And welcome to today's episode of Critical Mass Radio Show. I am your host, Rick Franzi. I'm very excited to have an organizational psychologist and the principal for strategy meets performance, Sherry Nooravi, as our guest. Sherry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
It's good to have you here, and I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this possible. Center Club, Community Bank, Decision Toolbox, Executives Unlimited, MBN Design, S&H Rubber, Strategic Market Intelligence, SunUp Group, T & Company, Tone Software, Turn Up the Volume, and last but not least, UPS Protection. The goal for this show is to help you, our listening audience of CEOs who are running middle market firms, to improve your decision-making skills. If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm Richard Rick Franzi. CEO Peer Groups is my Twitter handle. And on your favorite podcasting software, type in these four words, Critical Mass Radio Show, and you'll receive our weekly updates of our programs. Although this week, we're doing an extra bonus show tomorrow. So if you're listening to us live, you may want to tune in on octalkradio.net tomorrow at 4 p.m. as well, where we have our special focus on the Pediatric Cancer Institute and two of the guests who work and support that organization. All right, communication is a critically important aspect for a growing company, and to get communication and then culture that you've dreamed of within your company, I've been asked Sherry to come and kind of talk about the steps you need to take so that you can be successful in this critical area. So I'm excited to have you on the program. Sherry, let's talk to our audience a little bit about your background.
My background started in psychology and journalism, and I was doing corporate communications work for Fortune 500 organizations, and I really started seeing the importance of leadership in the workplace, and eventually over the years worked my way towards where I am today. I got my master's in organizational communication and many different certifications in training and personality assessments, and I had a lot of jobs where I was an internal consultant for organizations, helping them really build their teams and their leaders, and working with other consultants. And I came to a point where I realized I just wanted a little bit more training so I could provide everything to help my clients change their culture, and not just coaching, not just training and development, but really the ability to help them look at the culture they have and align their senior teams and make change. So I actually decided after all these years of experience to go back to school, and it was a great experience, really getting me that extra edge that I needed. And after I completed it, I started my organization because I just felt I was at a point that I could do it and really help my clients who are growing quickly and need that help.
Okay. And the way you answered that question, some of the words you chose lead me to believe that the cultural alignment isn't always automatically there with leadership teams?
Exactly. Here's the thing. Growing companies have growing pains, and they are led by smart, talented people who've taken the risk to start an organization, and they are trying to keep it strong and provide the services and products to their customers, and along the way sometimes forget about the culture. They forget that the decisions that they make or don't make impact the rest of the employees. I have what I call culture killers, which I see a lot in the companies that I work with, and it's very natural for them to happen as the company is growing so quickly.
Okay. Are we going to touch on the culture killers?
I would love to.
Okay. Are we going to talk about that later in the talk?
Whenever you're ready.
Well, I'm here for you, Sherry.
I'm here for you, Rick.
All right. In that case, is it that leaders just assume that the culture is understood and it will continue to thrive as they grow? Or what is it that you're seeing, and is it a culture killer that causes the culture not to be what it is, what the executives thought it was, or what it was in the early days, in the good old days when there were just three of us, and that kind of a thing?
You can look at culture as the personality of the organization, and whoever started the organization and whoever is leading it, you're going to see those aspects of those people's personality in the organization.
Okay.
So if you have a leader who is high risk and fast moving and great at firefighting, that's what you are role modeling and telling your employees is great for the company. And to a degree it is.
Okay.
And what happens though is in this in this drive for being flexible and, being very innovative and going toward risk, sometimes the other things like long-term planning fall to the wayside, or they're not something that's as balanced.
Okay.
And so that's where some of these great strengths that these leaders bring in turn into weaknesses and what I call culture killers.
Okay. So that's the second time you brought that up. So let's talk about culture killers then. You're listening to Critical Mass Radio Show. Sherry Nooravi is my guest, and she's an organizational psychologist, and she's the principal at her firm, Strategy Meets Performance. We've got about 3 minutes till our next commercial break, so can we touch on some of the culture killers that you've identified?
Sure.
Okay.
These are basically the symptoms that come up when I do a culture assessment and I talk to people in the organization about what's going well and what's not.
Okay.
So a couple examples of them, and they all start from the top, are that the leaders will say one thing and do another, so they're not walking the talk. And that's something that hurts the culture because the employees are looking to you to follow through with what you are saying you will do. And so when you don't, it impacts morale. It makes people very confused.
Can I ask, is that a intentional thing or unintentional?
Great question. There's a lot of pressure in running an organization and keeping it strong, and so a leader may say, look, every customer needs to be treated the same regardless of the size, and then a great huge new customer comes in and the leader may say, well, let's push them ahead in the production line. And it's understandable why it happens, but here's the thing, employees are saying, well, so that's going to push back our production dates. What does that mean last week and last month and last year when you kept telling us it's important for us to treat all customers the same?
Okay.
So they're looking to see the follow through and walk the talk. And here's the thing. It requires discipline, and it requires sometimes just taking the hit and making those tough decisions, and perhaps telling that great new client, you know what, I'm so sorry. We would love to have the product to you at this date, but we have other customers and we just can't, and we wouldn't do it to you.
Right.
And, might it be a risk? Might they go with someone else? Possibly, but what you're doing is living to the values that you've been talking about.
Right.
And that's going to strengthen your culture because it sends a very strong message.
Interesting. All right, we have about 2 minutes left. Can you touch on any of the other culture
Sure. Other
killers?
ones are flavor of the week, which I hear a lot of, and this is when the leaders are really creative and innovative and always scanning the environment and looking for great new ways to expand business.
Right.
And where it becomes overplayed is there's a new idea constantly, and then it's sent out to everyone from corporate and from the leaders, and then people start doing it, and then it kind of drops off.
Right.
And so that's where, again, it starts impacting the culture, because then people, employees and leaders will tell me, well, if we ignore it, it goes away.
Right.
Wait it out. And
Right.
so, that's a darn shame, because if the leaders continue this behavior of bringing the ideas and then being really careful which ones they want to take all the way through, and they vet them and get support and buy-in from everyone, it'll create so much more success and also help bring more of that behavior in the organization.
Right, it creates a learning organization that's growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of good benefits that could come from that.
Right. It's about taking it to the end.
Okay, so I've got to wrap up this for a second. Man, did it go fast talking with Sherry. We're going to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you go anywhere, because when we come back, I'm going to ask her the kind of few ways that her firm helps companies bring out culture and communications that they've dreamt about, that they know that they want as a leader, but maybe they may not be seeing in their organization. So don't go anywhere. You're going to want to learn from Sherry about that after these words from our valued sponsors.
Richard Franzi is the author of 2 popular business books for CEOs. His first book, Critical Mass, The 10 Explosive Powers of CEO Peer Groups, was the first book ever written on the secret value of CEO peer groups. His second book, now with newly updated information, is Critical Mass, The Power of CEO Guiding Principles. Richard's books contain powerful information to help CEOs running middle-market companies gain valuable insight to improve their decision-making skills. Richard's books are available as paperbacks or Kindle versions from Amazon.com. To find them, type Richard Franzi in the search box.
Are you looking for your successor? Someone as dedicated and experienced in their field as you? Executives Unlimited delivers the top executive talent you need for your company's long-term success. 98% of our clients re-engage us for additional hires, and over 90% of the executives placed by us since 2007 are still in their positions or have been promoted. That's twice the industry's average retention rate. How do we do this? Dedication. Executives Unlimited believe success isn't success until it's long-term. Call us to invest in your long-term success. 562-627-3800 or visit us at executivesunlimited.com. Let our long-term success leverage yours.
Today's businesses are embracing voice-over IP telephones and unified communication desktop technologies to more effectively communicate and collaborate with their customers, suppliers, and colleagues. The Reliatel management software from Tone Software Corporation helps organizations of all sizes manage their communications technologies to ensure great voice quality and better levels of service and reliability throughout their business. Through Reliatel, you'll gain higher return on investments from VoIP and unified communications technologies while lowering the associated operational support and maintenance costs. Learn more. Visit www.tonesoft.com or call 800-833-8663 for information on Reliatel by Tone Software, the solution for quality business communications.
And welcome back to this edition of Critical Mass Radio Show. I am your host, Rick Franzi. Sherry Nooravi is our guest. She's an organizational psychologist and the principal at Strategy Meets Performance. You know, it dawned on me, Sherry, that we got such into the conversation that I neglected to ask you to tell me a little bit and our audience about Strategy Meets Performance. What is your company comprised of? What do you do?
So I help companies create very strong cultures, and it starts with really looking at the culture that exists and what makes it very strong and positive, and what are some areas that it's not helping the company for its growth. And when we talk about what is culture, it's in the simplest form how things are done, how decisions are made when the leaders are not present. If the leaders are not around and you're looking at the types of behaviors in the organization, that's kind of, this is how we are. This is how we do things.
Why is that an important distinction when the leaders are not around?
Because as you grow, as you scale, the most important thing you could do is create a strong culture that, regardless of the location, regardless of which employees are with the customers, it's the same type of behavior. It's the same mentality. You know, these great organizations you see, like, you know, Starbucks and Zappos and all these companies that have grown quickly, they were very intentional from the beginning about the culture they wanted to have. They were intentional about the type of people they wanted to bring in. The skill sets are one thing, but the behaviors and values and attitudes are a whole other thing.
Do you work with and have you been able to help companies to develop onboarding and hiring practices that allows them to get at that the fit part of it, not the skills part, but the cultural fit part?
Yes, yes. And the first step really is to have the senior team look at what are the values that and the behaviors that have brought us to this point, and what are the behaviors we need for the next stage in our organization. It's not just what's brought you here and articulating that and what it looks like. What else do you guys need?
Okay.
And once they have that, I help the organization share that I help the leaders share that with the rest of the organization and have conversations around it. So it's really a process that is ingrained throughout the company, and they get feedback, and it takes a little bit of time until then the whole organization is in agreement. Yes, this is who we are, this is how we do things, and then you take that and you use it for your hiring. You take it and use it for your onboarding, for how you promote people, for how you reinforce the behaviors that are important, for how you make the tough decisions, where if you have a high performer who is making the company very successful, but that person doesn't have the right behaviors, you coach them, you help them, and then you have a decision to make, because that really will make an impact on your culture.
I've always thought that your values should be things that you're willing to terminate an employee for if they consistently won't do it or violate that principle. It should be a short set of things that are that serious to your company.
I exactly agree with that. And when I don't see people firing for people, when these leaders are being difficult or onboard terrorists, as they're called, it's really sending a message to the rest of the organization that, hey, if you are bringing in the money, if you're bringing in the revenue, it's okay how you act. And so it's those tough times when the CEO needs to take a look at this. And I always say, hey, try coaching the person. Sometimes people are not aware.
Right.
People
you have to give them the opportunity,
oftentimes
right?
people want to be better.
Right.
So, and I've seen a lot of turnarounds in those
so it can
scenarios.
happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But when it doesn't, then you have to make that tough call.
Yeah.
And it makes your in the short term, will it hurt the bottom line a little bit? Will it be difficult? Yes. But in the long term, it will make your company much stronger.
So we're talking with Sherry Nooravi. She is the principal at Strategy Meets Performance. How did you come up with the name, Strategy Meets Performance?
I just thought, where is the bridge between the leaders coming up with the strategy and here are the employees with the performance? How do we bring them together? Because if the strategy is the what, performance is the how, it's the culture, it's the values, and it's creating that bridge.
Okay. And so that's where you play then. That's where your company, and that's where you sit. All right. But you also have advanced degrees that help you with this. Do you find that employees want the executives to talk about culture, to talk about values? Do you find the audience is interested, or do you find that you have to warm them up?
For the most part, people have sensibilities about what a good culture is, whether it's for the employees, whether it's for the customers, whether it's for the overall community.
Okay.
And especially with millennials, which are a huge percentage of the population and the working population, especially by 2020, for them it's very natural. They expect a company to be regularly paying attention to its culture. They expect a company to have a proper talent management program where there are career paths and regular discussions on their performance. And I think they're holding companies to a higher standard because these are things that companies should invest in.
Right.
So, for the most part, I think it is changing the standards of the workplace. And, even in their interviews, they're asking how the company gives back. And so all of this is a natural part of discussions on the culture of the organization.
Right. I think millennials have a better sense for how a company should comport itself than the previous two generations did in the workforce. The boomers were probably the worst, and the Gen Xers, maybe we took too much for granted, or we didn't think we had the right to ask.
That's what I think. I mean, all the things they're asking about and expecting and thinking a workplace should be positive and encouraging and all of those things, I thought those years ago. Okay. I always thought, gosh, this doesn't seem like a very healthy work environment. Right. But we didn't have the words for it. We didn't have the language for it. So, again, it's raising the bar. Right.
And I think you're a better leader for being tested that way internally, right? Because then I think your story plays better in the marketplace. If it doesn't play in Peoria, it's not going to... I mean, many times we've seen successful politicians, stars, even companies who have one public perception of their brand and one internal perception. And once the internal makes its way to the public, if it's radically different and worse, it becomes the overriding perception, right?
Yeah. If you start internally, and it's like the secret sauce that Herb Keller used to talk about with Southwest Airlines. If you take care of your people first, you are authentically creating a great brand that it will, especially with all this great social media available, it will become the external brand. Right. You don't have to worry about that as much these days, because if you're bringing on good people and you are growing them and you are creating a great environment, that brand will come through.
And the customers will notice that when they deal with your brand, right?
They will notice it. It will be obvious. If you are really working on that culture, you could have different staff working with the same customer, and they will notice that consistency.
Yes.
And not just in my training and my work with my clients, I've done a lot of research on the CEOs of high-performing companies, and they have certain trends in terms of how they bring people in and how they invest in their development, and it shows up. It shows up in the numbers, it shows up in the customer service, and ultimately in the brand.
Do you find that those companies that do that holistically and achieve positive results are also then become an attractive place for high-performing people to want to work? I mean, I would think it would make sense that if you're that type of person in the marketplace, you go, hey, I've heard good things, I know somebody, I've seen their brand. I mean, it might be a natural way to even attract those kind of people to your brand.
It absolutely does, and it's so easy to find out about organizations these days by looking online, and there's websites like Glassdoor.com, and just authentically care about the culture you're designing and know that the more intentional you are, the stronger it will be, and it will really attract the best.
And where does that definition of what your culture is come from? Does that make sense? Did I ask that? It's kind of a clunky question, but where does because you can have very different cultures in very different companies, and they all work, right?
Yes.
If you have the right people and the right leader. So where's your when you get with a leadership team and you want to kind of bring them back to zero, where do you go to start building the culture building blocks?
Okay, so I like the question, and one thing that's really important for your listeners to think about and remember and take comfort in is that there is no one type of great culture, and a lot of times we'll see we'll see videos of Zappos and different companies, that the tech companies that have the ping pong tables, and that's great for them and their customers and their sales teams. And so it's really about what kind of culture do you want to create. It's all about the intention and the follow-through of it. I've had clients say, I like a culture that's, more professional. We want it to be fun, but we don't, feel like we need to have all of these big activities. We actually like it to be more professional. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. And the more clear you are on it, the easier it'll be to attract people who feel comfortable in that.
Right. It's okay if it's okay with you, right, as the leader, and if it's okay with the people that you have in your company.
And if you're going to attract people who have that behavior. Not every culture has to be this big extroverted culture.
Exactly.
Where, people have streamers everywhere, and that's a great culture for a certain company, but it's not, there is no one size fits all. And it's so much more about being introspective and looking at what kind of behaviors do we need now, and what do we need going forward.
That you mentioned it earlier. Thanks for circling back. So I wanted to ask you on that. I mean, I love that idea. We know what was worked for us up to this point. What has to be adjusted to take us to the next level? But how do you help them to not lose what they've built on by attracting something they think they're missing to get to the next level? Is that clear?
Yeah, so when I work with companies and do a culture assessment, I'm talking to not just the leaders, not just the next couple levels of leaders, but the informal leaders, the people who are really known for promoting the culture in the organization, regardless of what position they're in. And I'm asking them, what is it that makes this company strong? How do you guys make decisions when there's crises? How do you make decisions in the absence of the leaders? And learning what are the thoughts and understandings they have of how they think things should be. And then I ask them, where are the areas you guys can be stronger? Where do you guys struggle? Where are your customers going that maybe you're not quite there yet? Where do you think they're going to be changing that you guys need to keep up? And so it could be that their customers are very tech savvy and they're growing in that way, but the company maybe doesn't do that much. Okay, so some of the new behaviors might be scanning the environment, being more strategic, and have very specifics around how each employee can create more of that innovation.
Okay. So it's hard to take a company that goes from 100 people to 1,000 people and have it feel the same and look the same as 100 people. Well, it almost can't, but there are some basic beliefs that have to be consistent between the two.
Yeah, so let's say you have gone through the process of bringing together your senior team, aligning them, coming up with the values, not just with them, but throughout the organization. It's then about how do you use those values to bring people on? How do you onboard that? How do you give them performance reviews where you're looking not just for the performance and what they've been brought on to do, but those behaviors? Are those coming through? Are you measuring them on that? And how are you promoting to that? And throughout this whole time, how are you communicating the importance of this throughout the organization? Because I have the corporate communications background, I write the messaging for the CEO or the president. I aid in the whole corporate communication side of it because people really are hungry to know what's going on with the company. You talk about values. What does that mean? So I have my clients look for when people are living out those particular values, and then they call them out.
Okay.
In the monthly letter to all employees, in the all employee meetings, in trainings, when I have workshops on the culture, I always have the leaders at least in the room for the beginning of it or throughout it. So they're talking about, here's our vision, here's why this is important, here's how we're going to measure it. And it really is very different than just having some training for employees. They're seeing, oh wow, this is important. This is part of who we are and who we're going to be.
Right. This is great. Okay, so technically the show should be over, but I'd like to go one more 10-minute segment with you.
Sure.
Okay. Don't go anywhere because I want you to think about and answer this question, Sherry. Can a CEO over-communicate or be too transparent? So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Sherry's going to address that and other things when we come back after this very short break from our valued sponsors.
Wow. Marketing predictions are out for 2015, and marketing success is changing. Did you know that Google is now actively tracking your business and personal brand and online reputation? Online and offline marketing has changed. Google is driving more than 85% of your traffic. And if your brand is inconsistent or has poor mobile usability, your rankings and traffic can suffer in 2015. To learn how your business is currently viewed and what can be done to improve your brand's visibility and authority, contact SunUp Group for a free marketing analysis. It could be a business game changer. Visit www.sunupgroup.com today or call 877-609-3840, extension 700.
If you are an Orange County business executive, this message is for you. Do you ever feel isolated with no place to turn for advice or feedback? Who holds you accountable to your commitments in your company? Where do you find the right resources to help you and your company grow? If you have these questions, then Critical Mass for Business might be the answer for you. Critical Mass for Business is committed to helping you make better decisions. These are groups of peers running businesses just like you, providing a great sounding board to test ideas and concepts, review plan and goals, and present issues and opportunities for discussion. The result is improved strategy, accountability, people, and execution skills. If you are interested in learning more, go to www.criticalmassforbusiness.com and learn more about our executive peer group.
Successfully navigating the changing world of public relations and digital marketing requires an experienced, tenacious, yet gracious team. In business for more than 20 years, Orange County-based T & Company delivers big agency results with personalized service. For more information, call us at 714-536-8407 or visit us online at tandco.me.
Are you ready to tap into the power of social media to promote your business? It's easy to get social with Turn Up the Volume, the award-winning social media marketing professionals who know how to get results. Drive web traffic, boost sales. Get social today. Visit www.turnupthevolume.com. That's turnupthevolume.com.
Welcome back to bonus time here on Critical Mass Radio Show. Sherry Nooravi and I are talking about all things when strategy meets performance, culture, and communications. And right before the break, Sherry, I said, in your experience, can a CEO either ever over-communicate or be overly transparent? What's your experience?
Can you give me a couple examples of what you mean by that?
Well, can a leadership team go back to the well of explaining to their employees their culture and their value systems and why this action is important in the larger context? Or can they be too transparent in sharing information about the way they made a decision or the things that are going on behind the scenes? I mean, can they ever be too indulgent in this area with their organization? I don't know the answer to that, and I'm just wondering if you've seen examples where they have been.
Well, when you're talking about over-communicating, there's a negative connotation to that. And I'll tell you this, employees really appreciate getting information about what's going on in the organization, what changes are happening. If there have been acquisitions, they're really hungry to know what's going on in these other locations. What can we learn from them? What are they doing? And so, on one hand, giving this type of regular, consistent information is something that really engages people and opens up a dialogue between the staff and the leaders and could bring a lot of innovation. In terms of talking about the values and, can you over-communicate that? Here's the deal. I think it's important to be clear on what they are, and there should be no question about it. But employees are really looking to see how you're walking the talk and how you're role modeling them. So it's not so much about talking about it all the time. It's when there are tough decisions to be made, making those decisions, because that speaks volumes.
Okay. So a different scenario than what I asked you, which I think everyone would agree would be very bad, is where you talk a lot about a set of culture values that you have and you don't live them.
Yeah, I mean, I see that a lot. I think leaders who do that are well-intentioned.
Okay.
And, when I go into an organization, I'll see sometimes these plaques and the values and the conference rooms are named after them, and I think it's very clever. But really, that's the question that it leaves me with is, are those lived?
Right.
That's the biggest thing. So you could have none of that. And if you have the leaders being just really intentional about the behaviors they want to see in others, then they're looking in the mirror and making those behaviors. And when you asked about, can you be too transparent, I think it's really about sharing with the employees enough where they know what's going on, but it doesn't have to be about every single decision.
Right.
But what it turns out, I see much more of decisions being made without talking to employees or gaining their input, and that really is unhelpful for the organization. And I see leaders of all levels doing it, and the reason is, I want to move fast.
Right. I don't have
takes time.
Right.
But, that's short-term thinking. Yeah,
they're not going to understand it anyway.
Right. In the short term, that might be a time saver, but in the long term, it's not.
Right.
When you don't have buy-in, when people are confused, when they don't know how to communicate it to the customers. And so it's really about making the strategy clear and the path to reaching it and the values clear.
So it sounds like you look at leaders as the cultural architects.
I do.
And that they're really that's part of their leadership responsibility.
And it's if you own it, if you realize how much power that carries, it's a very exciting thing.
Right. And it is my distinct belief that the larger the organization is, the harder it is to reframe the culture. So get it right the first time, or at least keep working it as you're growing, because later on you're going to, with more people, I just think it's a bigger challenge.
You should always be working on your culture. It's as if, I'm going to use the metaphor of a garden. If you have this beautiful garden, you need to be constantly feeding it, giving it vitamins, trimming it, Some people would say talking to the plants. But the thing is, there is no, here we did all this. We had this strategic planning. We had the workshops. Okay, the culture should be good. You constantly need to be reinforcing it and making sure that the rest of the organization is doing so as well.
And is it fair to expect that your supervisors and your middle-level people, if you're large enough to be fortunate enough to have those levels in your organization, are able to do that for their departments as well?
People do what they're rewarded for.
Okay.
And so if that is part of what you are measuring them on, and you're expecting them to do certain activities to build the culture, they will tend to do it.
Okay. I also think that people are slightly different when the bosses are around than when the bosses aren't around. And I think a healthy culture that fits with what your expectations are tend to reinforce the kind of behaviors that you expect to have in place when you're not there. Sort of what you'd said earlier, the boss can't be everywhere as the company grows. I think by leaving a little bit of the culture there, or leaving a lot of the culture there, I think it helps the leaders feel good that the company is showing up in the marketplace the way that they would want it to.
Right. So the more you are developing your employees, the more you are coaching them and making clear what decision-making matches what the organization wants to do, the more likely it is that they are going to be making those same types of decisions when they are empowered to do so. When you have values of, for example, I'll use a common one, customers first. There could be a tough decision and there's no leaders there, and the staff will say, you know what? Okay, this is a tough one. Let's look to our values.
Right.
Or what would our boss do? What process would our boss go through in talking about this? And
right.
So when they've seen that role modeled, then they too will understand, okay, so this is our process. Let's talk it through. Let's look at how it's been done in the past. Let's look at the values, and then they make the best decision possible.
That's really that is sort of the liberating agent of a culture that's in line with what you expect. Because I find as companies grow, many times the leadership have to go back and rethink with the employees why they did what they did. But if you've got these guideposts, these touchstones, you might be more likely to get them to the point where, well, I wouldn't have done what you did, but I can see exactly how you got there.
That's exactly right.
Rather than, I would have never even started down that path, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot easier to correct, I would think, and have a more consistent delivery of your value proposition by having a strong culture that sits alongside of that. That's why I think having a healthy organization and a well-performing organization are not mutually exclusive.
Well, it just depends how you describe healthy. Profitable?
No, I mean healthy culturally. I mean healthy from a people development, all the things that we've been talking to up to this. A well-run company is profitable, it's efficient, it's effective, it's good in the marketplace, but it may be an unhealthy place to work. It may have politics, silos, etc.
Right. So you can have a culture that is encouraging, and there are managers giving feedback, and there's clear communication, but if the strategy is not correct, and if there are leaders who are not holding the employees to a high level of performance, then it doesn't matter. You could, just because you have a good culture doesn't mean it's
not going to guarantee
be
performance.
Performance, because you have to have the strategy, and you have to be holding people up to meet that strategy. Because sometimes when people try to have this culture where there's latte, I wrote an article about this on my blog. It's not about latte machines and ping pong tables.
Right, I saw that. Yeah,
that's just stuff. People are looking for goals and coaching and clarity on how to get there. And so if you don't have that and you have this other stuff, that's not going to create a profitable organization. You can